Annette talked earlier about lived experience, that one of the things that was missing from the discussion around suicide and suicide prevention was the lived experience voice. The voice of people who have been to the bottom and come up, and we've really been conscious of doing that this time, making certain that the lived experience gets a voice. And in this session here, we have a person with the lived experience. And Greg is an interesting character. One would read his resume and it reads like a success story, except you're only looking at the mountain peaks. You're not looking at the valleys. Greg and myself first met as finalists of the Mr. Universe competition. I was a finalist, but my mother wouldn't let me go. But Greg did go. He's also won an Academy Award for filmmaking. He's a carpenter. And he's an all-round good bloke. So can you please welcome to the stage Greg Van Borssum.
Thanks, John.
Don't do that
He still got it. Well, it's been fantastic just being a part of this today, regardless of taking part. Just to be amongst people that are like-minded, that actually want the industry to go ahead, and that if we have the chance to save lives and actually build people up, it's such a fantastic place to be and a place to go. I'm going to give you a little bit of my story and how I began and what my life sort of led to, and just let you know what I've seen and learned from the industry. I grew up in a pretty rough area. Its nickname was Criminal Hill. The cabbie, I found out last week at a function that I met a taxi driver. He said, I saw that area was actually, we nicknamed it the Screamer. He said, because you'd scream in your taxi and you'd know there was a screaming match going on somewhere else and you'd scream off. That's where we grew up. Lots of violence, lots of trouble. I lost a lot of friends. Current count, I've lost 7 friends, or 7 people. That's 4 friends, 2 work colleagues, and 1 auntie to suicide. A lot of people. And some were very high flyers and some were very low livers. But they let life get to them. And that can happen sometimes. When I grew up, I was a very skinny kid. And I started getting bullied and copying all the same things that people get. So I decided that I needed to make a change in my life to improve. And it was tough to do, because I was so far behind the rest of the people in my physicality, and so I would get beaten up and picked on. But I made a conscious effort to start weight training, and I started getting bigger and bigger, and I became very obsessed with this sport. And by the time I was 16, I went into my first bodybuilding competition. Now back then, I didn't realise bodybuilders wore fake tan. I don't tan very well at the best of times, so I walked out amongst a sea of golden bodies, smack bang in the middle, white as a ghost. And that's the response I got from the crowd. But it was a learning curve. But you've got to fight through that stuff in life, because life hits you with those hard hits. I lost my first friend at 16. I had a catch up with him in the morning. I went round to his house probably I think it was 2.5 hours later, to see his mother banging her head on the kitchen table, and the father wiping what was left of him off the ceiling. Really tough stuff to see when you're a kid. And it wasn't the first time it was going to happen to me. And I'm sure everyone in this room has been through something like this. So I'm not telling you anything new. And we've all had experience of some sort, and it sits with you forever. My life eventually would change. I became a carpenter. I started working in the family business. Now, my dad's a fantastic craftsman. He couldn't price a job to save his life. We never made any money. We always just eked our way through. But eventually, when I was off at the family business, I decided that I wanted to try and make movies. It was a goal I always had. I had no idea what I was doing, as many things. And I had a crack at it. It took 15 years to try and make it through. Lots of low points. By the time I finally made it, I was broke. But success happened. We've made some films that have won Academy Awards, big films. But that takes me to my recent film, which was Mad Max, the new Mad Max film, which comes out in May. I did all the action design, choreographed. I've been on this film for 16 years of my life. We'd put everything into this film too. We'd put everything on the line. We were in Africa shooting this movie when we went over budget and we got shut down. We came back looking at losing everything we owned, including the home. Everything was on hold. We had no process to move forward. We had nothing left. We had enough money to last for 6 months, and I thought, well, I better start looking for some work to do something. So where did I fall back on? The trades. But not as a chippy this time. I went down a bit lower and worked as a labourer. Now, the work is great. I love the physical work. The people are fantastic. Who's a tradie here? Who's a carpenter? Who's a chippy? Who's a steel fixer? Hands up. All right. You guys are there and girls are there every day slugging it out, doing massive hours. Great people. They really are, and they work hard. They really do. Everyone does that's there. But what happened to me at that point in time was I was on a site where I'd come from working with A-list Hollywood actors like Charlize Theron and Tom Hardy. Within 4 weeks, I was working at the bottom of the Barangaroo lift shaft, shoveling mud for 60 hours a week. Work was great, but what it did to me up here was detrimental. I thought, what did I do wrong to get into this position? To actually go from this to this, and everything I'd worked for was just stripped away from me. It was really tough to bear. Then came the next thing, we were on the verge of losing the family home. It was tough. I remember the point that I had to change myself was I sat on the bed looking at my kids one morning and I wondered if I was coming home that night. It was one of the hardest realizations I had to make ever. Because did I come home or did I kill myself that day? It was such a tough dilemma. But I thought I'd fight for the kids. And I worked towards getting myself out of there. I started learning how to listen to other people and what they were going through. And what I learnt was this. There were so many people in a much worse position than me. So many chippies and tradies and steel fixers that had drug problems, alcohol problems, gambling issues, broken families, third marriages, living away from home, FIFO workers that were suffering because they're living out of suitcases, who were struggling to hang on every single day, who were still fighting the good fight. And that's rough. When you know people are doing it rougher than you, you start to back away a bit and go, well, hang on, I'm not doing it so bad after all. It was around the same time that I was fortunate enough to come into contact with a wonderful pair of people called Caroline and Steve. I got to know them very well, and they were from Mates in Construction. They started running us through programs of what they were looking to do on the sites. It was fantastic. Because one thing I know from being a tradie is that when you see a psychologist or you see someone wearing one of these things, you automatically build a barrier. And you don't want to know about them because you go, how the hell would you know what I'm going through? How would you know the suffering because you're probably making $300 an hour upwards? How would you know what we're going through? I have no doubt that most of you do. But to the guy in the orange shirt on the site who's slugging it out 60 days a week on a 60 hours a week on a jackhammer, it doesn't correlate. So when they came on site and they're wearing the orange shirts and they're mingling with the workers and training the workers for signs, what to look for, how to help a mate in trouble, people started to understand and started to go with that. It's a very important thing, and it's such a positive outlook for what we have. But what it also led me to understand is what it means to be a bad boss. You see, in my time running films, I've run teams up to 1,000 people. Big teams from all across the planet. Every country, every religion, race, creed, belief, you name it, we've had to deal with all of it. And if you aren't mindful of your people, if you don't love your workers, which don't take that the wrong way, if you don't love your workers, if you don't validate them and occasionally say, hey guys, thank you. Thanks for your effort. Not just, geez, you're a bunch of lazy bastards. I wish you'd pitch in Monday and do a harder job. Because that's what happens. That's all you seem to get on the site. And I know it's a rhino skin place. You know, it's for tough blokes. We've all been through it. We all know what it's like. But when you're copying this every day, plus what might be going on at home, which I know has been alluded to already, which if you've got a broken family, huge debts, gambling issues, this compounds so fast. And you start taking yourself where I went to, which is a very dark place. So why not reach out for help? Why not put your hand up and go, you know, help me, someone help me. 2 reasons. 1, we're men. We don't speak. We shut down. And 2, when you are in that place, you're so introverted, you're trying so hard just to hang on every day, just to fight, to survive. You don't have the physical energy to reach out for help, and you don't think anyone can help you anyway, until you make that decision to end your life. I've been and seen this too many times. It happened to another friend of mine recently. He came home and found his son hanging in the garage, another tradie. You know, because you don't have the strength to carry on, you don't have the strength to reach out for that help. But if we understand, how many people are here today? What do we got, 200? 200 people. See, the problem I have with statistics are their numbers. I'm not a great numbers person. But say we talked about 200 people losing their lives, and we put faces to those 200 people. If you look around everyone in this room and see what it would mean to you if they weren't here tomorrow, it makes it feel real different. And suddenly, things take on new meaning. Suddenly, it matters. See, one thing when I was working with military specialists and crews was that you look out for the person next to you. And that's one thing fantastic that mates in construction are doing. Because we start learning the skill sets to look out for who's next to us. Look at the changes, the small changes. They're not always big. Someone comes in today a little bit more down than yesterday. Suddenly they're happy. The question is, why are they suddenly happy when they've been down for 3 weeks? They teach you those skill sets to understand what to look for and how to help, how to take them to help, where the help numbers are. We all get that little thing to put in our wallet. Everyone gets that. Keep it. It's valuable, I promise you. It's been one of the greatest assets I've ever had. It encouraged me to speak. We had an incident on one of our sites where someone lost their life. We all got corralled up, not quite as many as this, but into a room, all of our team from where I was working for Theos, Peter Theos' company. And everyone was sitting there for quite a long time, just looking at nothing. And because I've been through so many suicides, I just decided to stand up and say, hey guys, this is how it happens. Yes, it's a shit sandwich. It's horrible. We don't want to go through another one. But if we don't do something about it, and as men and especially as women both, because we both shut down, my auntie died of this same thing, we will lose our lives. But if we're understanding and we don't think that we're not men if we speak, if we're not men if we don't hide away, we actually think it's more manly to stand up and go, you know what? I've got an issue. I need some help. And if you can tell your mate that, well, you've got a chance at a future. You've got a chance at coming in tomorrow. You've got a chance of being helped and maybe being put through some sort of training that can help you understand, some sort of financial assistance, something that can bring you back. Because we don't want to lose anybody. You know, most of us have been through something where we feel that pain and we know what it feels like. You know, I've heard some fantastic speakers up here today who have all lived that same thing. Most blokes here, and probably a lot of women here, have been through depression of some sort or some low time in their life where they wonder, gee, is it worth getting up? So if we're mindful of that and we start understanding what this is trying to be for, we will all improve. We'll save so many more lives. I promise you. I speak quite a bit these days, and it was because of that incident that I started, because I realised that filmmaking is great. That's cool. You get a lot of fame and all kinds of things, but it doesn't help other people in many ways that it could. Where this can, if you can get up and spread a message where someone might take something away from it, where someone might improve, you've done something worthwhile. And I'll give you one example. I did a keynote speech. I'd never done one before. My first one. I got asked by someone. I'd spoken, I think, for 6 minutes once before. Someone said, we need you to do a keynote speech at our business. I went, okay. I didn't realise it was an $8 billion company that was there, all their world sales teams. There was 500 people to speak to. I speak about suicide. Every time I speak, it comes up. Because you know why? Because everyone somewhere, someone's going through it. And I've worked that out. And so I spoke on it at Henry Schein, a huge company, massive medical company. At the end of that speech, I was upstairs later having lunch. One lady came in and she said, I've just got to tell you something. You just saved my life. When I heard about how you nearly killed yourself and how you fought your way back and how we've always got something to live for, I realised that so did I. And maybe I've got to be more creative and more energetic in what I do, and I think I can actually do this. That there was worth way more than you could ever ask. Just that one person. I promise you that. One last thing from me, because I'm running out of time, I think. I've got a very dear friend of mine that's a FIFO worker. Not just a worker, he started off in the bottom, and over 9 years systematically worked his way up into a supervisory position, a very high one. And I've seen him be very down and very aggressive when he gets home from his work. And I got him the other week. I said, when you get home, from the minute you walk in the door, write me a letter of all the points that need changing. He told me so many people that are losing their lives over there. He works, they call them floating hotels. He said they're actually modelled off prisons. He said the security guards that are there are basically wannabe coppers. The rooms are so small, you can't even fit anything in. When you do go to do your turnarounds now, they've increased it to a 4-week swing instead of a 3. What's the problem with that? He said you can handle 3 weeks. You can deal with that because you still come back, you kind of fit into your family. You kind of fit into the agenda, the schedule. But that 4 weeks, he said, that's a killer. He said, some guys aren't getting back. We're hanging on by such a thin thread when we get back that we're so aggressive and so angry. Our families are breaking up. Most of these guys are on a multiple marriage list. Most of them are. Most of them have been through 1, 2, 3 marriages. They've all got all kinds of debts. But the money's there. But what happens, you get addicted to the money. The other thing that happens to them now is they now have not the same hotel room they used to have. He said, at least when we had the one room, we could put a photo or two up and feel like home. But not now. He said they get hotbedded into other rooms, so you're living out of a suitcase. I've lived out of a suitcase. It's pretty rough after 9 months. So these are the things we have to be mindful of when we're talking about workers. Because workers aren't workers, they're you and they're me. They're all of us together. Because we're doing this together, we're a building team. Everyone here is part of a team structure. And there is an I in team. I always talk about the I team. I don't know if I think I drew it at the table before. This here. I always talk about the I team. I said there is an I in team, but it's usually hidden inside the A-hole. And that's usually the person at the top. All right? Because they're not mindful of the worker. So just in closing, I just want to say to you this. Look out for your workers. They're your mates. These guys stand for something fantastic, I promise you. I fought to speak here. I really did. I had to argue and battle my way here because it had such a great agenda of people. Because it was so important that I wanted to say what I had to say. Because it matters to me. It matters that we save lives. I've lost so many. Please, I want to see all of you help save others. So everyone stand up for a second. Everyone jump up. Turn to the person next to you, shake their hand and say, be here tomorrow. All right, everybody, I'd like to thank you for your time, your patience putting up with me. I hope you've learned something from today. I always learn when I speak. I learn that I probably shouldn't speak, but I learn when I speak. I'm a chippy at heart, always will be. My family, my dad's a chippy. You know, and I'll always fight for the tradies because I know how tough they slug it out, all right? And I've been around some great tradies, and from the Steelies, even the Irish, all right? The Irish steel fixers we have in Barangaroo are a great bunch of blokes, and I was there for a year and a half. And I had a fantastic time with them. I must say, it's some top-of-the-line fellas, I must say. So everyone I've met on the site, I still really enjoy their company. I catch up with them. So thank you for your time. I much appreciate it. Okay.